When the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
On Filme Shilmy, we've always been so delighted to have some fine talents on our platform. And I think yet again, we are very lucky to be graced with such beautiful actors. I mean, Arif Zakaria, Chirag Vohra, and Sidhant Gupta. Thank you so much for joining us on Filme Shilmy, and heartiest congratulations on your upcoming show on SonyLIV. I think we are very excited to see how the freedom movement of India sort of pans out on screen. I mean, it's such a big chapter of our history, but yet also very contested figures in today's day and age as well. I think I'm gonna begin with Arif. So I'm gonna begin with you, and then Chirag will go to you, and then of course Siddhant. Um, I think at a time like this, where we've seen such different perspectives about Jinnah, Gandhi, and Nehru, for you as actors, how difficult is it to really go with the human aspect and not with the previous perspectives or the external perspectives about them as leaders?
Yeah, I'm glad you've kind of answered my own question really, because when you play such larger than life characters, people have a lot of ideas about these characters because they're images people have seen and heard of and read and way of behaving, and their actions have actually impacted all of us in all decades in the last 60 years or so. So if you cut the frill out and try and understand what the person was, what his persona was, what his complications were, what his mindset was, apart from the politics, apart from the ideology, then it becomes like a character you're playing minus the frills of the character or the trappings of the character. So
Hmm.
I think that's essentially what it is. You got to cut the whole larger than life persona of those characters. At least I tried to do that for Muhammad Ali Jinnah and just understood perhaps to a small extent what made the man, what dismantled the man, what were his what was idiosyncrasies, his frailties, his ego, his complexity, and how he went them out, and how he was a political opportunist in that way, and how he made use of that opportunity and created something. Right or wrong is not for me to judge. That's a historical perspective where it's open for discussion for anybody, you, me, anybody in the world.
Hmm. Hmm.
But just trying to get into the complexity of the person was, I think, daunting. And that is what I was seeking for, really.
Hmm.
Not the politics or not what his personal ideology was or what the kind of impact he had.
Hmm.
But you
Uh,
can tell me, Arifji, in on the sidelines when we speak.
So, I'm coming over. Siddharth, I'm coming over right now. Just send me your address. We'll do
All
the
right.
Zoom call together.
I've sent it already. Check your WhatsApp.
right.
So Anuja, that's what it is really. It's you cut the frills, you cut the persona, and then try and understand the person. As simple as that.
Hmm. Very beautifully said. Chirag, I would love to know your perspective on this, especially with someone playing like Gandhi, who, for some stratas of society, he's like a demigod, whereas for some, he's an absolute villain. So again, for you to
Yeah.
kind of find your balance and to find that your human voice, middle ground perspective, how interesting was it for you as an actor to do that?
Yeah, actually, the script that Nikhil sir and the team of writers have written, like they have researched for more than like 4 years before starting the series, and uh, human angle that they have managed to achieve uh, in the यानी मिडनाइट का ये जो बुक जो है उसके ऊपर ये जो उन्होंने जो स्क्रिप्ट में जो ट्रांसफॉर्म हुआ है
जी.
तो उसी एरिया में जो हमें गांधी का जो रिप्रेजेंटेशन करना है दैट वी मैनेज टू अचीव दैट ह्यूमन एंगल एंड बिसाइड्स दैट इट इज ऑलवेज जो न्यूआंसेस जो हैं वो गांधी की ऑटोबायोग्राफी जो है इन गुजराती है रेड इट इज कॉल्ड मारा सत्यना प्रयोग तो वो जो सारी चीजें हैं उसमें से लेके पब्लिक डोमेन में जो उनके वीडियो रेफरेंसेस जो हैं, उनकी वॉइस स्पीच रेफरेंस जो है, ये सब जो स्टडी करके जो मिला है, और जवाहरलाल नेहरू के साथ और सरदार वल्लभ भाई पटेल के साथ उनके जो इंटरपर्सनल रिलेशनशिप जो है, जो इस रियल के यानी इस राइटिंग के जरिए बुक में जो लिखा हुआ है और उसे जो ट्रांसफॉर्म हुआ है राइटिंग में, तो उसे परफॉर्म करने में ही अपने आप में एक ह्यूमन एंगल आ जाता है।
जी।
तो वो जो डिफरेंट इमोशंस है, डिफरेंट कॉम्प्लेक्सिटीज जो है इंटरपर्सनल रिलेशनशिप में, तो इन परफॉर्मिंग दैट जो ह्यूमन एंगल आता है, क्योंकि वो राइटिंग में इटसेल्फ इट बीन पोर्ट्रेड वेरी वेल।
Absolutely, no, very rightly said. I think writing हमेशा एक बैकबोन होती है, I think कोई भी चीज़ की, and I think जैसा आपने कहा जो पर्सनल रिलेशनशिप्स है और जिस तरह से एक ब्यूटीफुल स्केच बनाया है इमोशंस का और इंटरपर्सनल रिलेशनशिप्स का, I think that definitely must have a really big impact, I'm sure. Siddhant, I think
How
it's
is your Hindi so brushed up, Anuj? I want to know.
well,
You live in London. You have a lot of people who speak in Hindi around you, or is it the content that you watch here?
So, I mean, obviously, growing up, I think my dad has also always insisted that we speak in Gujarati at home. But obviously, because मैं गुजराती सीखा हूँ, मैं मुझे पढ़ना लिखना आता है, तो
Yeah.
obviously because Hindi and Gujarati are very similar, सिर्फ कुछ अक्षर का अंतर होता है. तो फिर मेरे डैड को आती है हिंदी में पढ़ना, तो उन्होंने मेरे को सिखाया कि कैसे लिखना है बेसिक्स. So that's how I kind of know. But I think Sid, I think obviously for you, thank you so much for that. You know, you're from Jammu and Kashmir as well, and I think Nehru is also from, like, he was born there as well. So for you, when you
Yeah.
have this very interesting common ground when it comes from the background,
Mm.
uh, I guess a similar question to our Chirag sir and Arif sir as well. How fascinating is it to have like a commonality, but then to also represent a very neutral voice as an artist? When you're playing someone like Jawaharlal Nehru as well.
You know, many factors, like Chirag said, the script is the first thing that you read. So for me, the script and also the research about this human being who existed back in time and led me to a point of to this feeling of respect and admiration turned to obsession for everything that he stood for. You know, the culmination of all of these factors drove me to just, to making sure that I find his voice and say the right things, what he stood for. And like you said, there are so many floating perceptions and opinions about all these men who existed back in time. I feel that is because of the limited knowledge of history that I believe most of us have, including myself. Before I researched this man and that world and these people, my knowledge, my ideology, my awareness of the history was so limiting. It was actually based on someone else's perception of these guys. Because, I mean, that's the thing, people have opinion, but I think that's why these stories are made, so people can say the right things through these stories. They are get more aware, because not everyone's going to read those books and chapters of history and in detail the nitty-gritties of what really happened and whatever led to this movement of independence. Apart from that, I think end of the day, what struck me was the core of these people, the human aspect that we're talking about. The core was very pure, because they didn't come here for politics initially. They come here for a movement of freedom for this country. They were not seeking anything in return, no power, nothing. They just came as these people who held on to sort of this love for this country that was very innate. It's like an energy that flows through a human being, which is very difficult to sort of explain or comprehend. You can only feel it through people. So I wanted to actually find that what leads a human being to just give their entire life to to the land of the country that has been under a rule for over 200 years, and making sure that holding on to the non-violent methods, which is inhuman. How do you not rebel to the atrocities that prevailed back then through the rulers? But holding on to the non-violent methods, and that spoke of their true heroism. So all of these factors combined really just drove me to an extent of just somehow finding it, and just like I said, saying the right things. And I think when we all met on set, we all had found the essence of what these people really stood for and who these people were, and we felt all of that, and that collision was just fireworks. And I can't wait for people to actually see it and feel all of that.
Interesting. Very interesting perspective. I think Arif and Chirag, sir, I think you've definitely had exposure to exploring historical stories on screen, in the sense when it is to do with colonialism and the freedom movement of that. Chirag, so I think you've been a part of films like Mangal Pandey. Arif, you did a very brilliant film, which I think is one of my favorite films about the partition, is 1947 Earth, Deepa Mehta's one.
Yes.
Yeah. I think for you as actors, exposure to this world of colonial India, how useful is that previous experience for you in exploring a subject like this? And what impact does it have on you as artists, actually, having previous exposures to a socio-political world from beforehand as well? Arisa, we'll begin with you and then we'll go to Chirag.
So I think perspective differs. The material I did in 47 was based on Bapsi Sidhwa's book and her interpretation of India and Pakistan told through the eyes of this family. Likewise, Freedom at Midnight is pretty much the perspective, and I'm choosing my words carefully, of Dominic Lapierre and Larry Collins. When they wrote the book, everybody was dead, barring, I think, Lord Mountbatten. So the history they wrote and compiled was from, I think, their conversations with Lord Mountbatten, the second generation of family of Gandhi, perhaps. Indira Gandhi was alive then. Jinnah, I think there was nobody here because they moved to Pakistan. So perspective is very important. You've got to keep that in mind. So what we are telling you is perhaps Larry Collins and Dominic Lapierre's research and their interpretation of what exactly happened through these iconic figures. So whenever you work on such a material, it also depends on the writer. What is he trying to say? Where has he assimilated his content or data from? And at what point in that conflict you appear? Like, I've done another film on the India-Pakistan, can't recall. Then I did a show, Karam Bhumi Munshi Premchand's serial years ago when I started acting on television. That was again based in the pre-partition era, a small landowner's family and how they are impacted by partition and how this guy falls in love with a Muslim girl who eventually moves forward. Or Toba Tek Singh, Sadat Hassan Manto wrote that story. So, yeah, it all depends on what the writer is trying to say. Where does the writer stand in this historical debate? Because we are ultimately catalysts. We are spokes in the wheel presenting a writer's ideology, a director's vision combined with that. So I think all the past work we've done has to be weighed very, very carefully through the written content and where the writer has stood at that point in history to understand that data, understand that material, and express himself or herself. So this is just my submission as to what we are trying to do now is perhaps what Dominic Lapierre and Larry Collins' interpretation of broadly what happened to events leading to partition. Of course, we know so much about partition now through a million sources, through a million books, through thousands of films being made and literature being written, so on and so forth. But I think that is very important, and I keep that I keep that very consciously in my mind. So nothing is right or wrong. It's perhaps a perspective. History is always
I think it's the best thing that has happened because if you look at it, it's an objective. Their perception is very objective in the sense these two people were French, if I'm not wrong.
One was French, one was British. Larry Collins and Dominic Lapierre was French, yeah.
Right. So someone just coming here and doing all the research and actually aligning their own perception with the truths that prevailed back then. And, I think I'm sure in all our research, everything sort of aligned at the same time. All their fact checks and everything, and just the take of their story on this movement. I think we needed that instead of someone who's internal writing it, because people, when they write stories, they tend to get a little biased, like people are. Some prefer Gandhi, some prefer someone else, and they, being someone who's actually the resident, they can sort of divulge into being biased towards their own opinions and liking of some giant personality that they're attached to. So I like the objectivity that these two men came, saw the entire world objectively, and it just made sense and it sort of aligned.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I
Even I'm trying to understand history. That's what this show also opened my sort of corridors to. A lot of stories about the partition, which I had heard, were general stories, but a show like this makes it more specific. My knowledge becomes a little more specific now after having done this show. You understand what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
a lot of aspects about Jinnah's personality, a lot of aspects about Gandhi's ideology, a lot of aspect as to why Nehru behaved the way he behaved, or how Sardar was actually caught in the crossfire of thought and ideology and politics. All these subtle things we always know, but these kind of shows and these kind of stories make it more directional. So now I'm a little more aware of the historical fact. Right or wrong, I don't know, but the fact is little more accentuated with such a show.
Hmm.
And I think the entire team, the production direction team, and Nikhil sir, of course, their own research of all the fact checks and replicating all the moments through the series when you'll watch it. It's like the reality that they created. Like they shoot Jinnah with Mountbatten and cut to there's the same meeting. So I mean, everything sort of aligned. So what I loved was actually, and I truly feel as an artist that if there is truth on paper, only then you can translate that truth through characters. If there is no truth on paper, the true, real emotions will never come out of you. So I'm pretty certain with my research, the team's research, and the book, the objectivity that all of them aligned to creating the story and giving people the fact checks of what actually happened.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah.
But then
So
also, it's interesting that we're having this conversation. But then I think it's also good that we're seeing films like, for example, there was a film called Savarkar that released, which Gundeep Kaur did a fabulous job in, and I think it's also good to see at the same time, not just a show like this, but also films like Savarkar, which also shows someone who is very contested, like I said, who is someone who has images, who's antagonized, but also somewhat, lauded as a hero for some, but also have this middle ground, of representation. But are we also at a point in Korea where there is a very strong, I hate to use the word cancel culture, but there is a strong cancel culture against things which are not so normalized, or against people who are not so liked, Arif? What do you think? Because I think, as someone from theatre, I'm sure you've had to do roles or play characters which even you've not liked as well, right? So, how do you feel about this whole cancel culture in terms of the representation, especially of historical figures and contested figures, might I add?
That's the voice I think internet has given us. That's the social media at overplay, because now we are so consciously aware of just about everything.
Yeah.
I'm aware of your opinion, you're aware of mine. I'm aware of Chirag's opinion, for example, or Sidhant's opinion. And
Mm.
then I am constantly evaluating that with what I believe since decades is true, but maybe it's not true. You stumble upon a piece like Freedom of Midnight, then you question everything. Oh, this is what I thought
Yeah.
happened. But actually, the reasons which led it to happen are something diametrically different. So we are constantly in this cancel culture. It's an ongoing, everlasting process because we're always discarding the old theories
Yeah.
for perhaps our new education coming in through so many diverse active forces constantly bombarding us through books and social media primarily. Savarkar I haven't seen, but there's a whole debate opening up about Savarkar now, whole debate reopening about Mahatma Gandhi, as you are aware, we are aware. So it's
Mm.
interesting to be in this whirlpool, I think, of myriad thoughts and myriad actions.
Mm.
Nothing is true everything makes sense, but I don't know what's the core truth. It's
Right.
as simple as that. So we are
Oh,
constantly grappling with that. We're constantly grappling and holding on to our sanity with our education, our past information.
oh, absolutely. Such a well thought out answer. Honestly, that was very, very beautiful. I think Chirag, so I want to also ask you, and I'm glad, Arif, you mentioned Toba Tek Singh, because I think Chirag, you've also worked in that film as well. I remember watching it at London Indian Film Festival, and I was
Yeah,
amazed. I mean, I think the literature is so beautiful and so heartbreaking in many ways as well. Where it's almost like a no man's land within your land, and I found that very fascinating.
yeah, yeah,
आई थिंक फॉर यू चिराग बिकॉज जैसा मैंने पूछा पहले कि क्योंकि आपने हिस्टोरिकल कंटेंट्स किए हैं कॉलोनियल इंडिया के बारे में और जब अंग्रेज़ों ने हुक्म किया था इंडिया इंडिया पे तो आप उस वर्ल्ड से वाकिफ़ हो तो वो कितना एक हेल्प मिलती है आपको एज एन आर्टिस्ट व्हेन यू आर डूइंग अ शो लाइक दिस टू बी familiar with that world but yet also find your distinct characteristic and your distinct voice as well.
Uh, uh, for this show, like I said earlier, कि निखिल सर एंड द टीम ऑफ राइटर्स ऑलमोस्ट 4 साल तक उन्होंने रिसर्च की है बिफोर स्टार्टिंग द शूटिंग। फुल बाउंड स्क्रिप्ट के साथ वो लोग रेडी थे। तो अपने आप में एज एन एक्टर ये बहुत हेल्प करता है उस पीरियड को समझने के लिए, because writer themselves, director himself is so very much clear. They are, यानी उनका विजन बहुत क्लियर है। तो हमें एज एन एक्टर, मैं अगर गांधी प्ले कर रहा हूँ तो मुझे अपना फोकस ये रखना है कि मुझे सिर्फ गांधी के कैरेक्टर को समझना है, बाकी सारी चीजें जो है, आसपास की चीजें जो है, दैट इज बीन टेकन केयर ऑफ।
जी।
तो विद इन द फ्रेम ऑफ द शो फ्रीडम एट मिडनाइट में गांधी जी क्या कर रहे हैं, क्या क्या सिचुएशंस जो है वो फ्रीडम एट मिडनाइट में गांधी जी के साथ फिल्माई जाने वाली है। इन सिचुएशंस में गांधी जी बाकी सारे किरदारों के साथ किस इमोशंस के साथ रिलेट कर रहे हैं। So like for Gandhiji's character in the show, I have maximum of my scenes with Jawaharlal Nehru and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. और गांधी जी सरदार वल्लभ भाई पटेल और जवाहरलाल नेहरू को अपने बेटे की तरह, दोनों को अपने बेटों की तरह मानते। अब जब एक पिताजी और यानी एक बाप और बेटे की बात आती है तो बहुत सारे अलग अलग इमोशंस जो हैं वो बाप बेटों के बीच होते हैं, और वो सारे इमोशंस इस यानी अदरवाइज वो एक्सप्लोर नहीं किए गए हैं बाकी और कहीं जगह पर। बाप बेटे के बीच रूठना भी होता है, मनाना भी होता है, इमोशनल कहना कि वो सारी इमोशनल मोमेंट्स भी होती हैं, वो और एट द सेम टाइम ये सारी चीजें जो है वो पार्टीशन के दरमियान हो रही है। एक इंडिपेंडेंट इंडिया होने जा रहा है जहां पर गांधी जी पूरी इंडिया को बांधे रखना चाहते हैं, और दूसरी ओर हाथ से बाजी छूट रही है, पार्टीशन हो रहा है। गांधी जी की अपनी आइडियोलॉजी है, हर एक इंसान का एक अपना स्टैंड है, और वो सारे स्टैंड जो है वो कॉन्फ्लिक्टिंग है एक दूसरे के साथ। तो ये जो सारी कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी ऑफ इमोशंस जो है वो सारी बहुत ही अच्छी तरह से राइटर्स ने लिखी। तो और गांधी जी का अपना एक क्वालिटी है, इन सब सिचुएशन में भी ही फाइंड विट, ही फाइंड ह्यूमर। तो हमारे डायलॉग राइटर जो है दिव्या निधि शर्मा, ही हैज रिटन ब्यूटीफुल डायलॉग।
Yeah, so good, so good.
तो एक एक्टर के तौर पर ये बहुत, यानी मैं कहूंगा कि एक चैलेंजिंग जो रोल होता है, जो सारे डिफरेंट इमोशंस जो होते हैं, एट द सेम टाइम गांधी जी की अपनी क्वालिटीज जो है एक कहना कि एक उनकी एक जिद जो है, उनकी एक जो विल पावर है, एट द सेम टाइम एज होने के साथ साथ वो थोड़े अपने जिन पे वो हमेशा दारोमदार रखते थे, जवाहरलाल नेहरू और सरदार पटेल दोनों उनसे दूर जा रहे हैं, तो उसका इमोशनल टर्मोइल, तो ये जो सारी जो सारे इंटर रिलेट, यानी जो लेयर्ड जो इमोशंस जो है उसे परफॉर्म करना, ये अपने आप में बहुत ही सेटिस्फाइंग एक्सपीरियंस रहा.
Gee, wow, very beautiful. Very, very beautiful to hear those insights actually. I think also, I think on the final segment actually, because I'm very happy to see whenever I mean I saw Rocket Boys also, and I was very impressed with seeing how actors who have worked in this industry for many years, not just with that show, but in generally as well on the OTT space, that actors who have been working silently for years are finally getting their dues as actors and as artists. They're finally getting that recognition. Siddhant, this happened with you, I think, in Jubilee also.
Yes.
Um, Arif and Chirag, sir, I mean, you have been part of two very big shows on SonyLIV. Scam 1992, I believe, Chirag, sir, you were a part of. Arif, you were in Avrodh. So for you as actors, and I know for sure that as individuals, from what I have understood of you, that you're not someone who cares about the fame. You're not here to become like a soup. You're not there with stars in your eyes, right? I'm sure that of that. But phir bhi, that validation when you get appreciated for your craft, that you've genuinely sincerity given your life and dedicated your life to, how fulfilling does it finally feel to actually get your voice heard as artists, actually? Siddhant, I'm going to begin with you this time, actually, and then we'll work backwards again. So then Siddhant, Arif, and then Chirag.
I think we all have stars in our eyes. Uh, it's how we all individually see the world. At least I believe it. As an artist, I carry like a dream in my eyes. And ever since Jubilee came out, and literally while in that journey, and after that also, I've been riding this wave where instead of just consistently how I used to be earlier, instead of consistently, thinking I deserve that project and I'm going to get that project and I'm going to, I need that and all of that. I started riding a wave where I felt that what's right for me, what I'm ready for, is going to find me, and it really started to happen. And while that is happening, I'm just able to say everything that I can out loud. End of the day, I feel to be out there as an artist, it means so much. It's not just one character. It's being able to find in you to separate to just that selflessness of letting yourself go and finding someone else and giving yourself to that person that you're playing. And so, I mean, I live in my own world, and that's how I'm choosing my roles and the stories that I want to be a part of. And it's a great give and take with such personalities that find you. You want to give like when I found Nehru, or when I was doing Jubilee, when I found it, and when I in that process, I thought I'm going to give it everything. I'm going to do everything that I can to just do justice to it. And you want to actually give everything that you can to a character that you're playing. A character always ends up giving me more. That keeps me going. So, I mean, that's an insight of my journey.
Amazing. What about you, Arif?
If I understand your question, recognition, as you said, is important. It's gratifying, and it always eggs us on. But I also believe fame is the worst residue of my business. Fame is, it's like a temporary bubble. It's just like a esoteric, organic thing which comes and goes.
Yeah.
So the less you pursue it, better. If you get it, fine. I'm not complaining about anything. And as I said earlier in some interview, that the profession chose me. I started off when I did a TV show when I was a student myself in college. This was years ago when probably you're not even born.
Hmm.
So this was in Doordarshan. So I accidentally stumbled upon it. Then I discovered the beauty of acting. So I think the profession chose me and it helps me. It guides me along. And that's my beacon, essentially. It opens up paths. But yes, it is gratifying to be applauded and appreciated for what you do. It's immensely satisfying if somebody comes up and says, oh, they've seen your work and they've liked what you've done. Processes differ. Each role has its own challenges. Some have been very good, some haven't been so good. Ultimately, the yardstick today also is public memory and perception, which is very short. Because the show is mounted so well, you'll remember many shows people do, actors do, even I've done, which have just sunk without a trace.
Hmm.
So, applaud, recognition, appreciation is very important, but as long as it's not the only goal, I think, in the profession. That's my humble take on it.
राइटली सेड। चिराग सर, आपके लिए कितना महत्वपूर्ण होता है एक्चुअली, और कितना महत्वपूर्ण है आपके लिए, बिकॉज आपने बहुत सारे कमर्शियल फिल्म्स किए हैं, मेन स्ट्रीम फिल्म्स हैं जो सुपर डुपर हिट रही हैं, बट आई फील लाइक इट्स वंडरफुल टू सी यू कि आपको एक एज एन इंडिविजुअल, एज एन आर्टिस्ट, और आपकी जो एक्सपीरियंस है इस इंडस्ट्री में वो अब एक रिकग्निशन मिल रही है, तो आपके लिए कितना सेटिस्फाइंग है वो चीज़, स्पेशली इन द OTT स्पेस एज वेल?
जैसा कि आपने कहा कि एज एन एक्टर आई एम रियली यानी आई एम फीलिंग हैप्पी दैट OTT प्लेटफॉर्म के थ्रू एंड डायरेक्टर लाइक निखिल सर और हंसल मेहता सर, इन्होंने रिस्क लिया हुआ है व्हेन दे कास्टेड मी, लाइक हंसल सर व्हेन कास्टेड मी फॉर इन स्कैम इन दैट पर्टिकुलर रोल, यानी यानी उस पर्टिकुलर कैरेक्टर में मुझे कास्ट करना, दैट वाज बिग रिस्क, क्योंकि nobody had pursued me in that kind of a character before doing that scam. या निखिल सर ने जो यहाँ पर गांधी के किरदार में मुझ पर जो विश्वास रखा है, एंड इट फील्स रियली सेटिस्फाइंग। ये मैं समझता हूँ कि मेरे लिए तो OTT प्लेटफॉर्म के होने के बाद ही मेरे लिए ये अपॉर्चुनिटी बनी। एंड डायरेक्टर ने जो यानी और ये सब डायरेक्टर्स के साथ भी ऐसा रिस्क लेने में नहीं मानता है। मैं समझता हूँ कि I have been fortunate that I met Hansal sir long back, and he is a kind of a director who takes risk in and whatever उनकी जो गट फील है उन्हीं को वो कास्ट करते हैं, एंड दैट्स हाउ ही वर्क्स। एंड एट द सेम टाइम निखिल सर एज वेल, उनको जो लगता है कि दिस पर्टिकुलर एक्टर फिट्स माय रोल और सूट्स माय रोल, उन्हीं को वो कास्ट करते हैं, एंड दैट्स हाउ आई हैव बीन chosen for playing Gandhi.
जी।
So yes, जब डायरेक्टर का इतना विश्वास होता है तो अपने आप में एज एन एक्टर रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी बढ़ जाती है उस कैरेक्टर को परफॉर्म करने के लिए टू द बेस्ट, एंड दैट इज व्हाट आई हैव डन इन स्कैम एज वेल एंड इन फ्रीडम एट मिडनाइट एज वेल। अपना सब कुछ दे दिया है, एंड आई एम रियली, यानी हम सब ने एज एन एक्टर जितना भी मैंने सीन सबके साथ शूट किए हैं, मेरे को एक्टर्स के साथ जितने भी दिन मैंने शूट किया है, आई नो दैट एवरी डिपार्टमेंट हैज गिवन देयर ऑल टू द शो, एंड हमने अपनी ओर से अपना सेटिस्फेक्शन शूटिंग में ले लिया है, एंड आई एम श्योर कि लोगों की ये सीरीज बहुत पसंद आएगी।
जी, बिल्कुल। No, absolutely. But I think it's so wonderful. I think we're so fortunate as viewers to see such wonderful talents unite. And I'm very, very excited to finish Freedom at Midnight and to see what other people also think about this series and to sort of see the discussions that arise from it as well. And I think I'm very happy that such wonderful talents like yourselves have really, really put your best foot forward as always, and think we're very lucky to have that. So thank you so much, Sidhant. Thank you so much, Arif. Thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for
Anand.
joining
Thank
us,
you.
and wishing you all the very
Thanks,
best
Anuj.
in the series.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Thank you.